Great. We'll call to order the special meeting of the Traverse Bay Area Intermediate School Board of Education. Dr. Seglark, would you call the roll, please?
Brown?
Here.
Shear?
Here.
Carpenter?
Here.
Tank?
Here.
Berge?
Here.
Fisher?
Here. Need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same. Welcome to the visitors, and can you tell me whether there's anyone that has shown up that desires to make public comment? Randy or Rachel? Or, excuse me, Renee?
Doesn't look like it, Joe. And we don't have anybody in the public comment area either.
Okay, then we'll move on to Roman numeral 2, recommendation, Great Start Readiness Program positions. Dr. Seglark.
As outlined in your board agenda item summary sheet, what we're requesting of the board is to formally approve 2 categories of new positions as outlined in our board policies 3.111 and 4.111. In order to create a new position, the Board of Education must formally do so. As you are aware, we have been working, some of us have been working tirelessly, thank you, Emily and Yvonne, on trying to resolve the GSRP slot deficit that might be created in our region. And so we have been working collaboratively with TCAP's leadership as well as community leaders. And we believe we have a viable solution at least for 1 year. That solution includes NMNC, one of our community partners picking up one of the classrooms. TCAPS will then pick up 3 of the classrooms. And depending on the slot allocation, with your formal approval of these positions that we're presenting to you, we would pick up anywhere from 2 to 5 classrooms. We're thinking that it's going to be 3, and that's why in our proposal to you, we're asking you to consider 3 positions for lead teacher, as it's called, and 3 for assistant teacher. Again, we will have a more formalized understanding of how many positions that will be depending on the slot allocations. They have regional slot allocations that will be coming to our region here shortly, and we're kind of going to be the ones that kind of scoop up and pick up all the rest that are needed. We want to ensure that we maintain the same number of slots in our region as we did last year. So before you is the formal approval of 2 new categories of positions, GSRP lead teacher and GSRP assistant teacher.
All right, do we have a motion to that effect, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is that a support then? Nikki, was that you?
That was me. That was Rachel.
Is Rachel? I don't know.
Support.
All right, thanks, Rachel. All right, we have a motion and support. Discussion.
So Nick, so these are approving the positions, and if more are needed, are we approving like an expansion if there's necessary, or are we approving 3 positions for each of 3 individuals for each position?
Really good question, Jim. As we are interpreting this, you're approving the job description and the position itself because it's new, and then the number will be really just dictated on administrative staff as to what is necessary to cover all the slots. So you're really approving that new created position, And then, we're going to be in the process of, as soon as, if it is approved, we'll be posting those positions and starting to interview. We fully believe it'll be probably 3, but a lot of that is going to depend on the slot allocations that we receive.
Good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I had a couple questions. So, and this might not be the appropriate time, and just let me know. We also received that letter from the regional foundation regarding, I read it, but I didn't read it as slowly as I probably should have. I didn't see any real dollars being described in that letter. And then I see our $305,000 estimated cost here. Can you kind of give me a little feel for how much, well, a couple things, how much we're talking about in terms of community support or expectation, and number 2, what the mechanics of that support really are through these 3 different organizations picking up the overall slot allocation, including us. And if that 305 incorporates that or doesn't incorporate any kind of support.
Yep, great question. The budget that we've built is really a balanced budget, right? With the incoming dollars that we're getting from the state for GSRP funding, we've structured it in such a way, even though this is hopefully a 1-year agreement, we've structured it in such a way that it will be self-sustaining. We do have additional startup costs, I'll say, to the tune of about $20,000. And if you put that $20,000 into the budget, it looks like on paper that we're backwards about $4,000. All right. The startup costs include things like PPE and technology necessary for our staff to execute the programs. TCAP's original budget deficit, I think, was in the tune of $100 and some odd thousand dollars. That was with fully operating the 8 or 9 classrooms that they have. Now that they're only operating 3 classrooms, that number has shrunk to $44,000. So in our conversations with our amazing community partners, I want to give a shout out to Dave Mengenbeer, Becky Ewings from Rotary Charities. The foundation has been phenomenal. And they have come and said, we are going to commit to helping you make this work. And Dave actually gave me a text yesterday and said, so to that effect, the number that they're using to give us support is $44,000 on the TCAP side. And for us, they're actually looking at $24,000, which would be the $4,000 in deficit that we are, plus the startup costs. And they already have half of that already committed. And they feel very confident that that amount will be achievable and achievable probably before the start of the school year.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, that makes total sense. Can I ask then, I mean, the 1-year caveat or nature of our conversation and approval here, is that reflective of the fact that the support to fill that gap by the community is not an ongoing promise to continually fill it, and therefore at some point potentially as next year unfolds, if we were to try to keep this exact same model, we would be embedding deficits going forward and reliant on community support to fill those deficits? Is that sort of why we're talking about it as a 1-year thing, or is it as an ISD running GSRP programs is not a preferred or core function?
I would say both of those things.
Okay.
But I want to go back to something I said. We built our budget so that it is, at least for the foreseeable future, sustained. It's balanced. We're going, if we had to continue in this model, because that was the only recourse, we feel comfortable that we would be able to do that. But it is not the preferred model. The preferred model is to have a great community partner come in and be that fiscal and run those programs. And the reason that is that we just simply have, significant legacy costs with pension retirements And so that would be the preferred model, and that's what we hope to be. It's not an ongoing commitment on our community foundation partners, and TCAPS is going to be very clear when they make their announcement that this is a 1-year agreement. So
Yeah. So then the next objective and goal, obviously, that you all have, right, is putting in place the solution for next year with those great community partners that will step up. But you've purchased a lot of time here to be able to do that right. So I think it's great. Really amazing, great work, frankly.
So
And
I
quick work.
appreciate that, and I'd be happy to. I know others might have questions too, but again, it gives me an opportunity to thank our staff. I mean, Yvonne has worked tirelessly. I mean, if you think about, we're in the middle of a pandemic, trying to do a return to school plan, new Title IX regulations, and I go into Emily's office and say, oh, by the way, we have to open a GSRP program and hire new staff, hire 6 new staff. And so it just really is a testament to the incredible people we have. And I want to thank Emily. Appreciate her being on the call as well.
Further questions? All right, go ahead and vote.
Shear,
Yes.
Carpenter,
Yes.
Tank,
Yes.
Bergie.
Yes.
I don't know if Liz is back on. No, Nikki,
Yes.
and Fisher.
Yes. Go ahead with the next item, if you would, Dr. Segler, regarding the Title IX.
So our sequence for approving board policies typically is at a particular meeting, you get a first reading, and then we usually put that out for public review for 30 days and then ask you to formally approve the new policy at the next subsequent meeting. Unfortunately, we do not have time for that sequence to take place. There are new Title IX policies, and you have a board summary sheet that kind of describes a little bit around what that looks like. It's really just interesting. We're required by law to have these new policies in effect by August 15th, I believe. Our next board meeting is August 11th, and so we'll be asking for your approval to put those in place, so we will be in compliance with the law. I want to just share with you that these new Title IX requirements are over the top in terms of additional work, additional training. Just as one example, every school district needs to have 4 administrator type individuals fully trained to do investigations. All those investigations need to be recorded and properly documented. It is really something significant. And we are providing for our region an upcoming training around these new requirements. And I fully suspect that we will probably have to serve our districts in a different capacity, because some of our small districts just don't even have the individuals to be able to fully execute these in the appropriate fashion. So anyway, with that said, I just wanted to provide that for an informational item. We will be bringing you by August 11th that policy, and we'll have to adopt it and then continue to move forward with the Title IX. Be happy to take any questions around that, or defer any questions to Emily.
Are the changes and the roles of these 4 administrators kind of related to either due process or are they conducting actual investigations?
Both. They're required to understand what those due process requirements are, and they are going to be having to conduct the investigations, or the ability to conduct the investigations. And I guess I'll maybe put Emily on the spot here a little bit. The reason why that there are 4, I believe, is because you have to make sure that there aren't any conflict of interest with any one of the investigators. So if you've only identified one investigator and that particular person might be somehow tied or supervisor of a particular person, you need to have a backup. Emily, is that how you see it too?
Yes, that, and then there's also an appeals coordinator, as well as the records holder. So somebody who's going to be in charge of keeping all of these records together and reviewing them. So it's a significant change. Historically, Pat and I have been the Title IX coordinators so that we were able to have a diverse option. And now we're going to need to look at identifying 4 different people.
You can
Okay.
see what the
Oh, go ahead.
challenges for small districts are going to be with the potential conflict of interest when, you know, when everybody knows each other and are in a chain of command for the most part. Tough.
With regard to the smaller districts and the I'll call it a burden, but the burden that's placed on them, how exactly are we stepping up then to provide support in these 4 different positions, and how widespread is that support across the region? And I know it's probably a little bit early, but I'm just curious how we're contemplating that.
So we haven't landed on that precisely, but we fully suspect a situation that might arise where a district who, as Jim said, has, connections with everyone, and anyone that they have trained just wouldn't be appropriate to conduct the investigation, then they may come to us and say, can one of your trained Title IX coordinators help facilitate the interviews and conduct the investigation? And I think that seems like a logical way to provide some support and service, but it's yet to be determined.
So that's, I mean, I'm talking out of school completely, which I tend to do once in a while, maybe more than once in a while, but it kind of reminds me of what they do in the court system, as maybe everyone knows, Joe would know, of course, where they kick a case sort of to a different jurisdiction or a different township or county. Is that right, Joe? There's a formal process to doing that, right?
Yes, they call that a change of venue.
And so that's kind of what we're talking about here, where it would be a sort of a change of venue, and the ISD would be that default alternative venue potentially.
I think that's kind of what we're thinking, that we would be able to provide that. It wouldn't be required, but what would be required is that each district follow the law and their policy. And so if they've identified that all of their individuals that have been trained have some inappropriate connection or oversight, then they're going to have to find an alternative. And I think could they hire an attorney? For sure, but as we know, as President Fisher might attest to, attorneys can be expensive at times.
Can you give an example of a Title IX situation that would need an investigation?
So again, Title IX is based on discrimination in any. I can pull up or defer to maybe Emily, but any discriminatory practice based on what the identified categories are by law. And so a particular Title IX investigation might be a staff member felt that they were being sexually harassed. And so they would file a complaint, and then that would kick into our obligatory investigation process by one of our 4 approved trainers and conduct an investigation.
So the Title IX covers employees too, not just students.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Further
And
questions?
besides having 4 investigators, is the depth and the nature of the investigation significantly changed?
I would have to defer to Emily on that one.
Jim, will you repeat the question? Did you say the 4 investigators?
Yeah, well, besides increasing the number from you and Pat to having 4 identified investigators, is the actual nature of the investigation changed by the policy modification?
It is a more in-depth process. And what the 4 people allow for are, we actually would all have different roles. So one may be the investigator, one may be the appeals coordinator, one may be the person who's working just with the student, let's say. So each individual actually is going to have a separate role and a separate title. So we all would not be doing the investigation. We'd all be trained to do those 4 roles, but we'd each have an identified role for TBA.
Okay. Gotcha. Thanks.
Further questions? All right. See you all in a few weeks, I guess. If there's nothing further, we're adjourned. Be safe.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a
Okay.
lot.